Welcome back to the Mental Game Gym podcast, where we help athletes train the part of the performance that matters the most, the mind. I'm your host, Andrew Crome, and before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know that every episode from this point forward will be available both in video and in audio. So if you prefer to watch your podcasts, then you can do that on YouTube and Spotify. Just search for the Mental Game Gym. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Have you ever been behind the blocks, standing on the field or waiting for the whistle, and suddenly that voice in your head starts talking? It says things like, what if I mess up? What if they're faster than me? What if I don't live up to the expectations? That voice, part of being human. Every athlete I've worked with has it. I had it too, big time. I remember back when I was swimming, I was standing behind the blocks before a race and I was staring down at the lanes beside me. And I glanced over at the guy next to me. He was taller, more muscular. And that voice would start. They're big, they're fast. You have no chance of winning. And suddenly, before the race even started, I'd already lost in my own head. I haven't even hit the water yet, but mentally, I'd handed the steering wheel to that voice. Looking back, I can see exactly what was happening. I didn't know it then, but now I know that that voice was a passenger on my bus. Because your athletic journey, your sport, your training, your competitions, it's like driving a bus. You're the driver, and you have a destination to get to. Maybe it's a goal time. Maybe it's a championship or a specific team that you want to get on, or just become the best version of yourself. But your bus is never empty. There's always passengers, right? Those passengers are your thoughts, your emotions, your doubts, your fears, your past experiences. And some of these passengers are quiet and they whisper, but some, they shout from the back seat when you're trying to focus. You've got a job to do, and all you hear is them saying, you're not ready, you're tired, everyone else is faster. Does that sound familiar to you? Now, when those passengers start talking, most people will start to panic, and they'll either do two things. They will argue with them, or they try and push them away. They try and ignore them. And, if they're arguing with them, maybe they're saying, no, I am ready, right? Or stop thinking like that. I can do this. But that's shown that it doesn't really help. And it actually makes it worse because now you're turning your attention to something that you can't control. You're giving up space and time and energy to things that you have no control over, and it's not going to help you perform. Think about being on the bus. You're driving, but now you're turning around in your seat, arguing with the people in the back. Because you're doing that, you're not watching the road. You're not watching where you're going. And that could cause your bus to veer off the side of the road, to crash, to swerve, right? And then you lose control. And that's the same thing with a performance. If we're too focused on what's going on with the voices and the thoughts and the feelings, then we can't focus on the performance. We can't focus on what we need to do. That's when we start making more and more mistakes. And that's what I used to do, right? I lost control, and every time that voice showed up before a race, I'd start fighting it, or there'd be times where I'd try and just ignore it and push it away, and I'd lose focus on the things that mattered. My start, my rhythm, my turns, my breathing. This is what I learned since then. Once I started studying the mental side of sport, I realized that you can't stop the passengers from talking. You can't kick them off the bus. And I always use this story, and it helps people understand that these thoughts, these passengers, are just like your hands. If I put them in front of my face, then I can't really see where I'm going. I can't see what I'm trying to do. And when we fight with those passengers, this is what's happening. They're right in front of our face. I can't cut my hands off, but what I can do is stop letting them be right in front of my face, stop letting those passengers drive. I can just let them be there. I can put them down on my lap and I can just let them be there. Because I'm the driver, you're the driver, right? You're the athlete with your game face on, your hands are on the wheel, your eyes are forward looking to where you want to go. And your job is to keep driving that bus in the right direction, no matter how noisy it gets inside. And the steering wheel represents the things that you can control. So your effort, your breathing, your body language, your focus, your preparation, your nutrition, your sleep. That's your lane. That's where your power lives. So when the voice in your head starts saying they're bigger, they're faster, you can't win, you can remind yourself that's just a passenger. It doesn't get to drive. And take a breath to give yourself some space, some time, and focus what's right in front of you. Where should your focus be right now? Right? You can always ask the question, what's important now? So I say win stands for what's important now. Because if we focus on that and then act on what we have to do right in this moment, then it gives us a good chance of winning, being successful. And that's what it means to drive your own bus. Let me tell you about someone who figured that out at the highest level. Olympic swimmer Mark Tewksbury. Before he won gold, Mark was stuck chasing times and results. Every practice, every race, he was focused on the outcome. He needed to drop time to give him a good chance of winning at the Olympics, and that's what he was focused on. And it made him tighten up. And he was swimming to avoid failure instead of swimming to perform. And eventually he realized, with help, that he had to stop obsessing over the results and start focusing on the process, the controllables, right? The steering wheel. So his stroke count, his rhythm, his mindset, how he reacted to situations. So he took control of the wheel again, and then the result was that he dropped the time that he needed and won the Olympic gold. And that's what can happen when you stop letting the passengers steer and drive your bus. And this is something I wish I knew back when I was racing and when I was competing. And this is why I do what I do now, because I wish I had this knowledge, this skill set when I was competing. I really enjoy being able to give these tips and tricks to you so that you can implement them into your game, your life. Hey, there are always passengers. Even for world-class athletes, you'll hear Olympians and professional athletes talking about those voices in their heads, those doubts, those fears. The difference is that these elite performers learn to drive with those passengers instead of fighting with them. Right? Because when you fight your thoughts, you waste energy. When you allow them, they lose their power. And this is a skill called diffusion. So separating yourself from those thoughts and those feelings and emotions. So try, instead of saying, I'm nervous, try saying, I'm noticing the thought that I'm nervous. See how that fits. If you say right now, I'm nervous, How does that feel? And then try and saying, I'm noticing the thought that I'm nervous. And that small shift puts you back into the driver's seat. It gives you separation. It's basically like turning down the volume of that thought. It's like moving from the back of the bus to the front seat again. So next time these thoughts show up, one thing you can do is visualize them walking onto your bus. You're in the driver's seat and you look at them and you nod, maybe even smile and say, you can ride, but you can't drive. And then bring your eyes back to the road. Bring your eyes back to what's in front of you. What do you have to do in this moment? So let's make this practical, right? The best way that you can learn from these podcast episodes is to write things down. So what I want you to do is, if you can, grab a notebook or your phone. If you can't, then I want you to think this through for a minute. And then when you have the time, come back and listen to this part and then grab your notebook. So the first step is I want you to name your passengers. Write down 2 or 3 thoughts or feelings that show up before you compete. If you have more, that's great. Okay. If you don't know right now, then try and think of at least one. And then when you do think of them, come back and write them in. Right? This could be, I'm not ready. I always mess up under pressure. I need to prove myself. I need to win. I need to score. Now, the second step is give them names. And it sounds silly, but this does help. It helps you separate yourself from these thoughts and these feelings and emotions. So I'll give you an example. One athlete that I work with named their passengers Doubtful Dave, Perfect Pete, and Anxious Annie. So whenever they had a thought that came up that was full of doubt, they would say, oh, there's Doubtful Dave. Or if they had something that came up and said, oh, you have to be perfect. You can't make a mistake. Oh, there's Perfect Pete. Okay. And naming them made them less scary. They stopped treating them like truth and fighting with them, and they just started treating them like what they really are: thoughts, noise. So once you've named them, I want you to move to step 3, which is practice driving anyway. So the next time those thoughts show up, don't try and get rid of them. Don't try and fight with them. Notice that they're there without judgment. Take a breath. And then you can say, oh, here's Doubtful Dave. You can ride on the bus, but you can't drive. And then bring your focus back to the controllables, to your steering wheel. What is it that you have to do right now in order to perform at your best? What do you have to focus on? What do you need to do? And action usually is the thing that really helps with being able to focus in the present moment. So think about what action that you need to do right now in this moment, and focus on that and focus on doing that. And any time that you notice that a thought comes in, again, just recognize that it's there. Okay, making space for it. It can sit in the back of the bus, and then focus back on what you have to do. And you'll notice the more that you do this, the easier it becomes. And the less you fight with those voices in your head and those thoughts and feelings that show up, and the less that you believe that they are true. And you'll start to notice, right, when you drive your bus, you'll notice that the passengers don't disappear. Maybe they still talk, but you've turned down the volume. Their voice gets quieter the longer you keep your eyes forward. And you train that skill every time you practice under pressure. So the more you do it, the better you become, the more you train that skill. So, for example, when you're training, you might catch yourself thinking, oh, I'm tired. Right? I can't hold this pace, for example. So instead of reacting to that thought and then immediately just slowing down, just notice it. There's that passenger again. And you can recognize, is this helpful for me right now? Do I need to listen to this? And if the answer is no, then go back to your rhythm, your breathing. Focus on where you need to be, what you need to do in this moment. And that's how you build mental endurance. Not by eliminating thoughts, but by learning to perform with them. One of my favorite moments working with athletes is when they finally understand this and they realize, I can feel nervous, I can have doubts, and I can still perform well. I once worked with a young swimmer who got so nervous before every single meet. She would tell me that her heart's racing, and this means that I'm not ready. This means that I'm not going to perform. So we worked through this. We worked through the bus story and she practiced it. And then at the next meet, she came back afterwards and she said, I still felt nervous. My heart was still racing. But I told myself, it's just a passenger. It can be here. I don't have to act on it. I don't have to believe it. And then she drove anyway. And she focused on what she needed to do. She didn't just swim better, but she looked lighter. She was smiling again. And that's the power of when you take the wheel back. So here's your challenge for this week. Step 1, start noticing your passengers. Write them down. Notice when they show up. Are there particular moments where they show up versus when they don't show up? What kind of events, what kind of situations are you in when these passengers show up? Because the more we can prepare for them, the more we know when they show up, then we're ready. We know what we need to do. Okay, so that's step 1. Start noticing them. Just recognize that they're there. And then the second step is starting to name them, right? Start giving yourself some separation between these thoughts or these feelings. And then the third step is to acknowledge them and tell them, well, you can ride, but you're not driving. You can sit in the back, but I'm focusing on the road. I'm focusing on the things that I need to do to get to where I want to go. And you keep your hands on the wheel. Right? And then that's how you build that trust in yourself. Right? The goal here isn't to have an empty bus. The goal is to drive confidently no matter who is on your bus. So the next time you walk out to compete, take a second, close your eyes if you need to, and imagine you in the driver's seat. Your hands are on the wheel and your eyes are forward. Your game face is on. And the passengers can talk. They can yell, but they don't decide where you go. You do. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. And if this episode has helped you, or if you think that somebody else should hear it, then please share it with a teammate, a coach, or a parent who might need that reminder too. Stay focused, stay steady, and keep driving your own bus. I will see you on the next episode.